Hello and welcome to The Top Story, a podcast with headlines of the day from our correspondents around the world. I'm Tian Yu. Coming up in this edition, the United Nations has adopted a China-proposed resolution on boosting AI cooperation. The U.S. Supreme Court has recognized for the first time any form of presidential immunity from prosecution. And Chinese President Xi Jinping is in Kazakhstan to attend the upcoming summit of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. We begin in North America. The UN General Assembly has unanimously adopted a China-proposed resolution that aims to boost international cooperation on artificial intelligence. The deal stresses that the development of AI should adhere to human-centered principles. It also encourages support for developing countries in strengthening AI capacity building. The Chinese permanent representative to the UN emphasized that the international organization must take a leading role on the issue. Fu Cong also said China looks forward to intensifying cooperation with the United States and all other nations on AI.
Very appreciative of the positive role that the U.S. has played in this whole process. And China is ready to work with the U.S. on the issue of AI, as actually this is an issue that has been discussed at a very senior level, at the foreign ministers level and also even at the head of states level. So we do look forward to intensifying our cooperation with the United States and, for that matter, with all countries in the world on this issue, which, as I said, will have far-reaching implications in all dimensions.
For more, here's Jody Jacobs in New York.
There was no debate needed. Member states threw their support behind China, making it clear the importance of artificial intelligence governance. The resolution put forward by China emphasizes the need for all member states, no matter how big or small, to enjoy equal opportunities in the design, development and deployment of AI. It also calls for the digital divide to be narrowed, as developing countries, it says, can often not keep up with the rapid pace of artificial intelligence development. The resolution, according to the Chinese permanent representative, had over 140 co-sponsors, something he says proves just how important AI development is to the world. China believes that some member states should leave behind their selfish interests for the good of the global community. And while some countries do sometimes disagree on some topics here at the United Nations, there are many they often agree on too.
This resolution highlights the important role that the UN plays in the governance of AI. As we all say that the United Nations is the most representative and the most inclusive international forum. And it is only by giving a central role to the United Nations, especially on the issue of AI governance, that we can really achieve what we have been saying all along, that is, to leave no countries out and to leave nobody behind.
China says it hopes that this non-binding resolution, once put into action, will ensure the better use of AI technologies around the world, warning that the time has come for a global document to govern this technology, given the risks and the dangers associated with it.
That was Jody Jacobs on the recent adoption of an AI proposal by China at the UN. The U.S. Supreme Court has made a landmark decision recognizing for the first time any form of presidential immunity from prosecution. It ruled on Monday that Donald Trump cannot be prosecuted for actions that were within his constitutional powers as president, but can be for unofficial acts. The decision will delay his trial for conspiring to overturn the 2020 election. President Joe Biden has criticized the ruling, saying the public had a right to know Trump's role in the Capitol riot back in January 2021. Nathan King has details.
So in the nearly 250 years of the history of the US Republic, we have never had a ruling on whether a president is immune from crimes while in office and out of it. Well, this ruling came down on partisan lines. Essentially, what the Chief Justice said, and this was on an ideological line, 6-3 in the Supreme Court, he said that the President has presumptive immunity for official acts while in office, but not for unofficial acts. What does that mean? Essentially, it means in the Trump insurrection case that it's going to be sent back to the lower district court for them to decide whether his pressure on Mike Pence not to certify the election was an official act or not, whether his outreach, and I'm using that word advisedly, to states and state legislatures to overturn the will of the people in states like Georgia, etc., was an official act or an unofficial act as a candidate for president has to be decided by the lower court. Now, they essentially will probably decide what they decided before, that it is. But what it does do is, for the first time in US history, set out parameters of presidential immunity. And there are some, leading to the debate, of course, of whether the president is more like a king or more like an elected representative. Let me just read you a couple of the quotes from Chief Justice Roberts in the dissent. "The president is not above the law," said the Chief Justice, "but Congress may not criminalise the president's conduct in carrying out the responsibilities of the executive branch under the Constitution. The president, therefore, may not be prosecuted for exercising his core constitutional powers." In the dissent, Justice Sonia Sotomayor said, "Today's decision to grant former president criminal immunity reshapes the institution of the presidency. It makes a mockery of the principle foundational to our Constitution and system of government that no man is above the law." And it really is a historic decision. For the first time, what it essentially says is that a president in office is allowed to commit criminal acts so long it's within his constitutional powers and cannot be prosecuted while in office or outside of it.
That was Nathan King in Washington. In the Middle East, Israeli tanks have continued their attacks on the Shujaia suburb in eastern Gaza City for a fifth day. The Israeli military says it had killed a number of militants in combat in Shujaia and found large amounts of weapons there. Palestinian militant group Islamic Jihad fired a barrage of rockets into Israel. Palestinian health authorities said on Monday that 23 people were killed and 91 others wounded in the past 24 hours. Akram Al-Satari has more from Khan Yunis.
Well, the operation in Shujaia continues, and the destruction that is resulting from that operation is continuous as well. The Israeli Occupation Army has been destroying whole residential blocks, either by targeting them with heavy fire belts from different areas or by just booby-trapping whole blocks and destroying them. According to the Palestinian Minister of Health, 23 Palestinians were killed and around 91 others were injured. And the people who are living by Salah ad-Din Street, the street that goes from the very north of the Gaza Strip to the very south of the Gaza Strip, have been reporting about seeing hundreds of Palestinians leaving the area of Shujaia, heading through that Salah ad-Din Street to the south of Gaza. Some of them are injured, some of them are fleeing with nothing whatsoever after the bombardment almost killed them, and they are fully aware that their homes were destroyed and that they had to leave their homes under the heavy fire that was continuous. As to the Palestinian factions, they have been repeatedly releasing some statements saying they have been facing the Israeli troops that have been advancing into Shujaia. They have been ambushing them. They have been booby-trapping houses. They have been using anti-armored projectiles for the sake of just blowing up the Israeli tanks that have been advancing into Shujaia. And according to the Israeli sources, several Israeli soldiers were killed and dozens others were injured. So the fighting is still continuous. The exchange of fire is at a peak, and this ground operation is likely to continue, bringing destruction, displacement, death and injury to the people in Shujaia and Gaza at large.
That was Akram Al-Satari reporting from Khan Yunis. The Israeli military says it has launched a new round of strikes targeting Hezbollah positions in southern Lebanon. It's in retaliation for a drone strike on the Golan Heights, which killed more than a dozen Israeli soldiers on Sunday. Meanwhile, Lebanon's state news agency NNA reports that the country has received an additional $20 million from Qatar in support of its troops. Jonathan Regev has more from Tel Aviv.
We saw this incident. 18 Israeli soldiers were injured in a drone strikes in the Golan Heights. One of them was severely injured. And continued strikes of the mostly Israeli Air Force in Lebanon. Israel is constantly targeting Hezbollah operatives, meaning it spots those operatives going into some kind of a building and then targeting the building as those operatives are in. It's part of this ongoing war. There's no other word to describe it going on in the Israel-Lebanon border. Yes, a war, but with certain rules of engagement. Israel does not strike as far as Beirut, for example, and Hezbollah does not strike as far south as Haifa, for example. Most of the strikes are along the border area, but they have been going on for nearly 9 months, and the civilian population in both sides of the border is practically gone. Both the Israeli communities close to the border and the Lebanese border communities close to the border are practically deserted. At least for now, this war has not escalated into a full-on war, but of course there's potential for it to happen at any minute.
That was Jonathan Regev reporting from Tel Aviv. In Europe, French political candidates are back on the campaign trail after the far right picked up major gains in the first round of parliamentary elections over the weekend. The National Rally secured around 33% of the vote, putting it in good position ahead of the upcoming runoff vote. But its opponents say they're committed to blocking the party from securing an absolute majority in the National Assembly. William Denslow reports from Paris.
All smiles for National Rally supporters and its long-standing figurehead, Marine Le Pen. The opinion polls largely rang true. The RN won big in the first round of voting. But its leader, Jordan Bardella, cautioned against complacency. He's eyeing an absolute majority and a shot to be Prime Minister when French citizens head back to the polls in the runoff race on July 7th.
J'appelle donc
I therefore call on all French people who care about their freedom and France's recovery to join me in amplifying the momentum and ensuring that the National Union wins out against those who want to divide us, undermine public order and trample on our values.
Et bafouer nos valeurs.
The RN's opponents say those values are of division and discrimination. Exit polls from Sunday's race triggered some protests on the streets of Paris. The electorate is waking up to the prospect of the first French far-right government since World War II.
I'm a little surprised because I wasn't expecting this result. It's unprecedented for France.
I'm a little pessimistic for France's future regarding the election's outcome.
The elections are the result of anger towards the president who lacks understanding of the French people's daily struggles.
Analysts say this election was an enormous gamble, just 3 weeks after President Emmanuel Macron's centrist bloc suffered a bruising result in European elections. France wasn't due to hold elections until 2027. The RN's opponents say voters can still prevent them from securing an absolute majority in the National Assembly. Members of both the centrist bloc and the left-wing New Popular Front coalition have suggested they'll withdraw candidates tactically in an effort to beat the RN in runoff races.
The National Rally's already made historic gains in this election. It's a gut punch to Macron's centrist alliance. But now they're seeking an absolute majority in Parliament and a knockout blow.
That was William Denslow on the French legislative elections that have so far seen the far-right gaining traction. Finally, in Asia, Chinese President Xi Jinping has arrived in Kazakhstan, where he will attend the upcoming summit of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization in the capital, Astana. The two-day meeting begins on Wednesday. The SCO was established on June 15, 2001 in Shanghai by China, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Russia, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan. Last year, India, Iran, and Pakistan joined as full member states, with many other countries getting candidate or observer status. Ilyusa Milakovic takes a look at some of the topics on the agenda.
Business people gathered in Astana for the Shanghai Cooperation Organization annual summit to discuss how they see the future of the organization. They talked about how to improve the collaboration between businesses in the SCO countries, and the optimism among them was palpable.
I think this is really an important and big event, a historical event. We, from the business circles, as businesses, see that each side, those who participate in the SCO, see the expansion of business relations within the SCO. They see that the barriers between the SCO countries have been reduced.
The meeting of the SCO Business Council was just one of the events that preceded a big event on July 3rd. On that day, the top-level SCO gathering will happen in the Palace of Independence.
Kazakhstan's capital is preparing for the most important political event of the year. The city has been spruced up, cleaned and polished ahead of the arrival of a string of high-ranking dignitaries from the SCO countries.
The workers are finishing the final touches around the building that would soon host leaders from SCO member countries. The agenda will focus on topics like further expansion of the organization, continuation of the process of de-dollarization of mutual trade, and expansion of security cooperation. The de-dollarization would seemingly be the most important of all of them, at least for the bankers. They say it is purely an economic question, as it is much cheaper to trade in local currencies than in dollars, and that would give a further boost to the SCO economies.
SCO has grown to become not only a political organization, international relations organization, has become an economic, because economy is underlying pretty much every fabric of our society, of our countries, and therefore without this dimension, it is very difficult to cooperate on a political level, international level, and things like that.
The 24th SCO Summit is already labeled here as one of the most important gatherings in its history.
That was Alyosha Milikovich on the upcoming SCO Summit in the Kazakh capital. Recapping today's headlines. The United Nations has adopted a China-proposed resolution on boosting AI cooperation. The U.S. Supreme Court has recognized for the first time any form of presidential immunity from prosecution. And Chinese President Xi Jinping is in Kazakhstan to attend the upcoming summit of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. And that's it for this edition of The Top Story, a podcast that brings you world headlines every weekday. For more news in politics, business, sports, and culture, you can subscribe to The Beijing Hour, a 1-hour podcast news magazine program. We welcome and appreciate all ratings and reviews. I'm Tian Yu. Thank you for listening.